Well, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our event, Raising Awareness of ATTR-CM. My name is Reverend Regina Lowe, and I will be your moderator for today's event. ATTR-CM stands for transrapid amyloid cardiomyopathy. It is a serious health condition that causes heart failure, but is often overlooked in the Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. Before we get started, I would like to thank Pfizer for sponsoring this event. I would also like to thank the Gateway District of the AME Church and St. Paul AME Church for being co-hosts of our event. And speaking of the Gateway AME Church, I would like to invite Reverend Edmund E. Lowe, Senior Presiding Elder of the Gateway District, to say a few words.
Thank you so very much, Regina. As you said, my name is Edmund Lowe. I am the presiding elder of the Gateway District of the AME Church. I'm grateful for all of our sponsors. I'm extremely grateful for our local church, St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, where the Reverend Dr. Spencer Lamar Booker is our pastor. This is a wonderful event in which we can potentially save lives. So take this information, share it with your family and your friends, because the only way that this can be of a success is that we go and tell others. Thank you, Regina, for doing an incredible job for preparing us. And we're going to have a wonderful time today. Please participate, and please, by all means, share this information, because you could potentially save a life. God bless you, and thank you for your presence and participation.
Thank you, Presiding Elder. And as he said, please participate, because today's event will be a participatory event. With that, I would like to invite you to take out your phone. Throughout the presentation, there will be a series of polling questions, and we hope that you will participate with us. Results will be tallied across everyone who participates, so we will not see your individual responses. Now, there are two ways you can participate. First, open the camera on your phone and scan the QR code that appears on your screen. Or you can go to slido.com on either your phone or computer and enter the number on your screen. That website again is slido.com, and again, enter the number on your screen when prompted. We will share this information again before each polling question. The health information contained herein is for a general audience and provided for educational purposes only. This information is not intended to replace discussions with a healthcare provider. All decisions regarding patient care must be made with a healthcare provider, considering the unique characteristics of the patient. In other words, we are sharing this information to help you learn more about a health condition. But this does not replace the need to speak to a healthcare provider. All decisions about your healthcare should be made after talking to a healthcare provider. This is because each person has different healthcare needs. And now it's time for our first question. Before we jump in, I'd like to check in with our audience and learn about how heart conditions may or may not impact you. Again, open the camera on your phone and scan the QR code, or join us at slido.com and enter the number on your screen. Our first question is, are you or someone you know affected by a heart condition? Your answers are either yes, no, or not sure. Oh, this is wonderful. I see people participating. Let's continue to have everyone participate. We can get a few more responses. That will be wonderful. Wonderful. It looks like responses have come in, and look at that. 70% of you answered yes, that you or someone you know are affected by a heart condition. Heart conditions affect a lot of people in our community, and maybe even some of us in this audience. That's why today's presentation is so very important. And with that, I would like to now introduce our first speaker, Dr. Victoria Thomas. Dr. Thomas is the Chief Interventional Cardiology Fellow, PGY7, at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. For our virtual audience members, please use the Q&A if you would like to ask a question at any time during the presentation. You will need to click on the box that says Anonymous before submitting the question. If you don't, your question will be deleted. Now, for our in-person attendees, to participate in Q&A with the speaker at the end of the presentation, please write your question on one of the note cards provided, and a volunteer will enter them on your behalf. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during our time together. This promotional speaker program is being sponsored by Pfizer. However, speakers are not employees of Pfizer, but have been retained to present on Pfizer's behalf. Now, let's welcome Dr. Victoria Thomas.
Good morning. I want to thank Reverend Regina, Elder Lowe, and your respective church families for having me today to come and talk to you. We're here today as part of this initiative called Voices for the Heart. Voices for the Heart is a program dedicated to raising awareness of ATTR-CM, a rare heart condition that impacts Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. As part of this program, Pfizer is teaming up with groups in the community to first explain the warning signs of a heart condition called ATTR-CM, and to help people who might have this heart condition to be able to talk to their doctor about this. So what are we going to talk about today? We're first going to talk about heart failure and how it affects Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. We're going to talk about ATTR-CM, a health condition that is linked to heart failure. After that, we'll talk about steps to find out if you have the hereditary form of ATTR-CM. We will share some information that is available to help you learn more. And towards the end of our presentation, we'll hear from a wonderful person, Randy Peters, who's living with hereditary form of ATTR-CM. And finally, I'll be able to answer some questions, if you have any, about this disease. And as a reminder for virtual audience members, please use the Q&A function and click on the box that says Anonymous before you submit your question. I will try to answer as many questions as I can during our time together. And remember, submit your questions to me at any time during our presentation if you're confused about anything. Okay, so first, let's talk about what heart failure is and how it affects Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. Heart failure is a condition where the heart has become weak, damaged, or stiff. As a result, the heart does not pump blood as well as it should. Although heart failure is serious, it does not mean the heart has stopped beating or pumping blood, but heart failure usually just starts slow and it gets worse over time. And it's important for us to remember that heart failure is more likely to affect Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. So, people with heart failure may feel tired or weak and sometimes fatigue is the word they'll tell me. They feel short of breath either when they exercise more than normal or when they rest. They can have an irregular heartbeat known as a cardiac arrhythmia. They can have swollen legs, ankles, or feet. And earlier, we talked about how heart failure may happen when the heart muscle's been damaged because of another condition. Some of these conditions include a previous heart attack or high blood pressure. But heart failure can also be caused by a variety of other health conditions, and which one of them we're here to talk about. Key points to remember from this section are: 1, heart failure is a condition where the heart muscle is weak, damaged, stiff. It means the heart's not pumping as well, and blood's not moving around as well as it should. Heart failure is more likely to affect Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. And then last, heart failure is usually caused by another disease or condition. Now, we've just heard that heart failure may be caused by a variety of diseases or conditions, and one of those are ATTR-CM. ATTR-CM stands for transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy. It is a serious condition, but it's often overlooked or missed, and that's why we're here talking about it today. Later, we're going to talk about the symptoms of ATTR-CM, but before, let's hear a little bit about ATTR-CM and how it affects the heart and other parts of the body.
This video describes what happens inside your body when you have ATTR-CM. We'll start by looking at a normal, healthy body, which makes many different proteins every day to help it work. Each protein has a different job. One of these proteins is called transthyretin, also known as TTR. Its job is to carry other substances through the bloodstream. TTR works well when it is neatly folded, but in some people, it can become unstable, misfold, and tangle together. These tangled TTR proteins travel through the blood and build up in different parts of the body, which can cause problems. In the heart, these tangled TTR proteins cause the muscle walls to stiffen and thicken over time. This means the heart doesn't pump blood as well as it should. Eventually, it can lead to heart failure. Doctors call this ATTR-CM. Tangled proteins can travel to other parts of the body, causing problems there too, including glaucoma or other eye problems, low back pain, and numbness, pain, or tingling in both hands or fingers, or in the feet. ATTR-CM is a serious condition that is often missed. It is important to find it early. So, talk to your doctor if you have heart failure and other symptoms, even if they seem unrelated to heart failure.
Now, as we saw in the video, ATTR-CM affects the heart. It can cause many of the same types of symptoms we see with heart failure. We've already talked about these, but they include feeling very tired, weak, fatigued, feeling short of breath, having an irregular heartbeat, having swollen legs, ankles, or feet. In addition of those shown on the previous slide, ATTR-CM is associated with other symptoms, including ruptured or torn tendons. A tendon is where the muscle attaches to the bone, and this can affect the arm, your biceps, your ankle, your Achilles tendon. It can also affect your stomach or cause gut issues like diarrhea, constipation, feeling sick or nausea, or just feeling too full quickly. It can lead to pain or numbness in the lower back or your legs. A doctor may even call this lumbar spinal stenosis. It can cause eye problems such as glaucoma, numbness or tingling or pain in both of your hands or fingers. This is called bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, and it's one of the most common symptoms of ATTR-CM. Joint pain, for example, in the hip or knee, numbness or tingling or pain in the toes or feet. A doctor may call this peripheral neuropathy. There are two types of ATTR-CM. The first type is known as wild type ATTR-CM, and the other type is hereditary ATTR-CM. Wild type ATTR-CM is most often affecting Caucasian or white men over the age of 60. It's associated with aging. However, hereditary ATTR-CM is the type most likely to affect Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. The symptoms can show up as early as 50 or to 60 years old, and it can affect both men and women. Hereditary ATTR-CM can be passed down through relatives, where wild type is not. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the hereditary ATTR-CM. We've heard it's passed down through families, but how does this happen? It's because of a change in the TTR gene, as we saw in the video. Everyone has genes which are made of DNA. Your genes have instructions for how your body functions. When a permanent change happens in the DNA that make up a gene, it's called a gene mutation. Gene mutations or changes may be inherited or passed down from parent to child. Some mutations can lead to conditions such as hereditary ATTR-CM. It's important to remember that if you have hereditary ATTR-CM, it is not your fault. It's caused by a change of the TTR gene, and it's not something that you could have done or stopped. One of the genes linked to hereditary ATTR-CM is most often found in African American families. It's often referred to as the V122I mutation, and around 3 to 4% of African Americans have it. This gene change can be inherited and passed down through relatives. For example, as this picture, grandpa may have had this change in his gene and passed it on to your parent, your aunts or uncles. But having a parent or brother or sister with ATTR-CM does not mean you will get it. Also, not everyone with this change in the TTR gene develops symptoms of hereditary ATTR-CM. Now, I know I've said a lot, so let's take a quick break and check in with Reverend Regina.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. You shared some great information, and now we do want to connect with the audience and see what have you learned so far. So here's another polling question. Go ahead and take out your phones and scan that QR code, or go to fleeto.com and enter the number on your screen. The knowledge check on that what we want to do is this question. What causes hereditary ATTR-CM? Your choices are being overweight, eating too many fatty foods, not exercising, a change in the TTR gene, or you don't know. We already have some people responding. Let's go ahead and take a few more seconds to get some responses in. All right, can we get a couple of more in? They're coming.
Yes, they're doing really well, Regina.
Wonderful. Let's take a look at our results. Look at that. 92% said a change in the TTR gene, which is the correct answer.
Excellent.
The cause of hereditary ATTR-CM is an inherited gene change that may be passed down through relatives. Unlike other heart conditions, poor diet and lack of exercise do not cause hereditary ATTR-CM, although they may make heart failure symptoms worse. And now let's go back to Dr. Thomas to get even more valuable information.
You all did so great. I'm glad that y'all are listening. ATTR-CM gets worse over time. So it's important that we actually find out early, which is why we're here today, because ATTR-CM is often overlooked or mistaken for something else. This may be because the signs can appear unrelated to heart failure. So don't delay. It is important to talk to your doctor if you have any of these symptoms of ATTR-CM that we've discussed today. It's also important to remember these points from this section. 1, ATTR-CM is a serious health condition that can lead to heart failure. Hereditary ATTR-CM is caused by a gene change or a mutation that can be passed down through relatives. One of the gene changes linked to hereditary ATTR-CM is most often found in African American families. It is often referred as the B122I mutation, and around 3 to 4% of African Americans have this. So unfortunately, the signs and symptoms of ATTR-CM are often missed. ATTR-CM can get worse over time, and so it's important that we find it early. And that's why we're here to talk to you, so you can know how to talk to your doctor if you have any of these symptoms of ATTR-CM that we've discussed today. Now, in this section, we will talk about how you or someone you can find out how and when if you have ATTR-CM. If you have heart failure and any of the symptoms we've talked about today, the first step is finding out if you have ATTR-CM, and it's to talk to your doctor. Remember that many of the symptoms of ATTR-CM may seem unrelated to heart failure. Other possible warning signs or red flags for ATTR-CM in people with heart failure can include losing weight with unknown reasons, feeling lightheaded when you stand up. Some heart and blood pressure medicines may make you feel worse and not better. Also, while the signs and symptoms we've discussed today, they don't mean that you have ATTR-CM, but you should tell your doctor about them. They may need to do some further tests. The more you tell your doctor, the better they can help understand your condition and help you. Once you've recognized the symptoms of ATTR-CM and spoken to your doctor, what's the path of getting diagnosed? Well, your doctor needs to order tests to find out how your heart is working and look for signs of ATTR-CM. Then, if ATTR-CM is a possibility, they'll do another test or a set of tests. These will help confirm if you have ATTR-CM. If you do have ATTR-CM, your doctor may recommend a genetic test. Genetic tests are used to find out whether someone has either the wild type or the hereditary form of ATTR-CM. Genetic tests can confirm whether someone has the wild type or the hereditary form of ATTR-CM with a blood sample or saliva sample. If genetic tests confirm that you have TTR-CM or the TTR gene, your relatives may be at risk for developing ATTR-CM. And so they should also consider genetic testing. People who get genetic tests should consider genetic counseling as recommended by their doctor. Counseling can be useful both before and after getting tested. This is to make sure that a person understands the test results, the impact of the genetic information that this may have on themselves, but also their relatives, and what are the next steps to take. Now, let's take another quick break and return back to Reverend Regina.
Thank you again, Dr. Thomas. We're back to another question in which we'd like to get your participation. The question is, thinking in general about seeking care for a medical condition, what is the most important factor that you consider before seeking care? And in this case, you can check all that apply. Your choices are reliable transportation, having a healthcare provider nearby, insurance coverage, available child care or elder care, time off from work, food or housing needs, or COVID. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to slido.com and enter the number. Wonderful. Results are rolling in. Let's keep them coming. Just a few more seconds. This is such great information to share and receive from each other. Wonderful. Let's see what results we have. Look at that. Most people responded insurance coverage, which is very important. Having a healthcare provider nearby was number 2, and then also time off from work. Thank you so much for responding. And now we'll go back to Dr. Thomas to provide even more valuable information.
Thanks, Reverend Regina and Elder Lowe. I think those are some really important responses. And so this next section is going to be actually highlighting some resources that can help you learn more about ATTR-CM and prepare you for conversations with your doctor if needed. If you're interested in learning more about hereditary ATTR-CM, there's information that can help you. Pfizer's Get the Message fact sheet is one great option with information about hereditary ATTR-CM, symptoms of ATTR-CM, and for our virtual audience, this is now available in the chat. yourheartsmessage.com, Ask Your Cardiologist, is also a wonderful website that contains information about ATTR-CM and how it's identified. It has educational topics on the website, which include what ATTR-CM and how it is and how it affects the body, how to look for signs and symptoms of ATTR-CM, how to talk to your cardiologist or other doctor about ATTR-CM, how to help others by becoming an advocate for ATTR-CM awareness. The website also provides inspirational, supportive stories from real people with ATTR-CM. It provides links to support groups and resources. In addition, the website allows you to create a customized doctor discussion sheet. This allows you to print a customized script that can help you start a conversation about ATTR-CM for the next time you visit your doctor. This is now available in the chat and will be made available in person for attendees as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, for that informative presentation and sharing some of the ways people can learn more about ATTR-CM. Now, before we move on, let's ask another audience question. Take out those phones. You're used to it now. Scan that QR code, go to Slido.com and enter that number. The question is, how would you like to receive more information about hereditary ATTR-CM? And you can check all that apply. Your options are more webinars like this via your house of worship or another community organization, from your doctor, through health fairs, receiving email communication, or by going to the website voicesfortheheart.com. You've already started answering. That's great. Let's keep those answers rolling in. Let's try for a couple of more responses. This will really help us to get the word out about this condition, this hereditary ATTR-CM. Thank you. Keep them coming. All right, let's see what our answers are. Wonderful. Look at this. More webinars and from our house of worship and community organizations are the top 2 choices. Thank you so much for responding. And now, I would like to introduce a very important person, our special guest, Mr. Randy Peters. Mr. Peters was diagnosed with hereditary ATTR-CM a few years ago and is now committed to increasing awareness about this disease, especially in the Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. Mr. Peters, welcome to the virtual stage.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Lowe. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Randy Peters. I'm 79 years old. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, which is a small country in the Caribbean. So by definition, I am Afro-Caribbean. But I now live in New Orleans, and I have hereditary ATTR-CM. I was officially diagnosed with a hereditary ATTR-CM in 2018, but I started experiencing symptoms 4 years earlier. In 2014, I was diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome, which I first attributed to my previous job as a college professor. But not long after, I also began noticing tingling in my extremities and a shortness of breath during my routine jog. But I didn't think that these symptoms could be related. However, there was this one time where I was struggling to climb the stairs of my daughter's house. And after a visit to the emergency room, I was eventually diagnosed with ATTR-CM.
Well, Mr. Peters, thank you so much for joining us. How did you know that you were living? Did you know that you were even living with heart failure before your ATTR-CM diagnosis?
Doc, I did not. In 2018, when I received my diagnosis of hereditary ATTR-CM, I was also diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And as I just mentioned, after I struggled to climb stairs of my daughter's house, she was the one who rushed me to the emergency room. And there is where I learned of both my conditions.
Oh man, that's scary. As a daddy's girl, I can only imagine how she probably felt.
Yeah.
Did you experience any other symptoms besides these heart-related symptoms?
Doc, I experienced probably, truth be told, probably all the symptoms mentioned previously in this seminar. Prior to receiving my hereditary ATTR-CM, I was diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome in 2014, as I said. As a former college professor, I thought that it was a result of my having spent so many work days in front of my computer screen and keyboarding and doing research and all that. But in the same year, I injured my bicep. I tore my bicep. And this, I was told, was a result of insufficient warm-up or lifting weights that were too heavy. In addition to carpal tunnel syndrome, I also started noticing a tingling in my extremities, dizziness when standing up, severe gastrointestinal problems, and a shortness of breath during my routine jog. But I didn't think that any of these symptoms could be related. Doc, at one time, I was seeing my primary care physician, an orthopedist, a pulmonologist, a gastroenterologist, and a neurologist. And yet the connection of my symptoms to ATTR-CM was never made.
Oh, wow. Had you heard of ATTR-CM before your diagnosis?
Doc, like many people and even some doctors, I was completely unfamiliar with ATTR-CM and didn't even know the signs or symptoms. It was while I was in the emergency room where I was subjected to a battery of tests. Then it was suggested that a test be done for amyloidosis, since one of the healthcare providers happened to be familiar with this disease. It was the first time I heard the term amyloidosis, as none of my doctors had previously mentioned it to me. I learned that some of the symptoms of ATTR-CM can mimic more common symptoms of heart failure, while other symptoms may not typically be associated with heart conditions. In my case, and for many, this can lead to a delayed or even incorrect diagnosis.
No, you're correct. It definitely can be an incorrect diagnosis. Were you surprised to find out that the underlying cause of your heart failure was due to ATTR-CM?
Doc, I was flabbergasted when I was told that the cause of my heart failure turned out to be ATTR-CM. I have been basically healthy all my life. I've always been energetic active, physically fit, always in the gym. So it came as a complete shock to me.
So what would you say is your advice for members of the Black, African American, or Afro-Caribbean community who may be experiencing symptoms like you and have a family history of heart disease?
I would tell them that it is very important as Black, African American, or Afro-Caribbean members who are experiencing any resolved symptoms or have a family history of cardiac issues and have been diagnosed with heart failure to have a heart-to-heart talk with your doctor immediately. Since ATTR-CM is a progressive condition and some doctors may not know that it affects Black and African American community members, this condition, as I said, can be overlooked or missed. Patients should check all their symptoms, even if they are unrelated, so the doctor has a full picture of their past and current medical history to help him or her make an appropriate diagnosis. And if someone is diagnosed with hereditary ATTR-CM, genetic counseling and testing is encouraged for direct relatives, which can help with early intervention.
As a patient with ATTR-CM, if someone suspects they have ATTR-CM, what do you think they should do?
I would advise someone or just a loved one, if they're experiencing unresolved symptoms and suspect it may be ATTR-CM, or if they have been recently diagnosed, they should talk to a doctor or an experienced cardiologist and visit yourheartsmessage.com, which is chock full of information on the disease.
Well, before you go, I need to ask one more important question. How are you managing your hereditary ATTR-CM these days?
Well, Doc, today, first of all, I work closely with my cardiologist, and he helps, and it's a team that helped me manage my ATTR-CM. A most important member of this team is my wife, Priscilla, and she's a big part of the disease management. She helps me tremendously. There have been some adjustments. I have to be very careful with my diet, and going out to eat in New Orleans has made that difficult, since salt is such a big ingredient in the famous New Orleans cuisine. I have to take frequent rests, which is something I never did before. And I have to nap at certain times during the day. And this is a much more different lifestyle than I was accustomed to. However, I still enjoy my life. I enjoy my hobbies, woodworking when I can, auto mechanics and welding, and ride my motorbike when I can. But most importantly, I take every opportunity to spend time with my wife and my family, especially my adorable grandchildren.
Oh, that's awesome, especially this time of year and the holidays.
Yes.
It's really important to spend that time with your family. And so I thank you so much for taking some of that time for us, and for sharing your experience. So thank you so much, Mr. Peters, and I only wish you and your family many blessings for the new year and a happy holiday season.
Thank you much. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peters and Dr. Thomas. We are now going back to our audience for another question. Again, take out your phones and scan the QR code using your camera, or go to fledo.com and enter the number on your screen. The question this time is, if you learned something new during this presentation, which of the following actions would you take? And again, check all that apply. Your options are: visit voicesfortheheart.com, tell a friend or family member about hereditary ATTR-CM, download the discussion guide, or if you're in person, pick one up from our table, speak to a healthcare provider, or none of the above. We have a few responses coming in. Let's get a few more in so we can see what steps you'll take. Can we get a few more responses in just so we can make sure that everyone will feel comfortable taking actions if they found something new during this presentation? Wonderful. This is great. Let's see our responses. 94, I'm sorry about that. Oh, it's tied. We're all over the place. 94% will tell a friend or family member about hereditary ATTR-CM. Yes, that is how we save lives, by sharing information with others. Others of you will visit the website and speak with your doctors. Thank you. Now, don't put your phones up yet. We have another question. Before we go back to Dr. Thomas, we do have this polling question we'd like to ask. After learning about ATTR-CM today and its symptoms, if you are concerned you may have it, which healthcare provider are you more likely to visit? Your choices: cardiologist, primary care internist or internal medicine doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, RPA, or an advanced practice professional. Let's see your responses come in. You all are doing wonderful. Thank you so much for responding. And all right, you all said, most of you, primary care internists or internal medicine doctors. Thank you so much for your responses. And again, we'd like to thank you, Mr. Peters, for sharing your journey with us today. And thank you, Dr. Thomas, for your presentation. I would like to now ask Dr. Thomas to answer a few of the questions that have come through Q&A from the audience. As a reminder to the audience, please check the anonymous box when submitting a question in Q&A and in the in-person group. Please make sure a volunteer has been given your question to answer on your behalf. All right, let's go to some questions. Dr. Thomas, the first question is, how common is ATTR-CM?
Well, I think that's a very great question. ATTR-CM, again, is often missed or diagnosed late. So this really means that we don't know exactly how many people in the US truly have the condition. But based off the data that we do have, ATTR-CM affects roughly fewer than 200,000 people in the US. In other words, one in every 1,600 people or persons in the country has ATTR-CM.
Thank you for that. Another question is, what percentage of heart conditions among Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities do we think can be attributed to ATTR-CM?
Again, another great question. Heart conditions like heart failure are more likely, again, to affect these populations, Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities, compared to other racial or ethnic groups. So roughly 1 in every 10 Black adults out of those respective communities have a heart condition. And since ATTR is rare, but it's often missed cause of heart failure, ATTR-CM can actually get worse over time. And so again, it's important for you to talk to it about it, to recognize if ATTR-CM is the cause of that 1 in 10 population.
Thank you for that. That's an important distinction. All right, we do have more questions rolling in. The next one is, can hereditary ATTR-CM be prevented through a healthy diet or regular exercise?
If you can remember, I was saying it's not your fault if you have the hereditary form, so there's really nothing you can do or can control it. ATTR-CM, again, it's something that's passed on through families, and so a healthy diet or regular exercise can help control symptoms, but it cannot prevent you getting it. It's purely based off of you getting it genetically.
Thank you. All right. If someone has, excuse me, if someone has the V122I gene change, what are the chances of developing symptoms of hereditary ATTR-CM?
That's actually a really good, I mean, I know I keep saying these are really great questions, but they are. It's really great. So we don't know how many people with the V122I gene can go on to have symptoms definitively. So we call it a penetrance. It's different like levels or layers to it. Someone with the V122 gene can never have symptoms. And then there's the extreme of someone with the V122 can have full-blown heart failure with the common symptoms of feeling fatigue, the arrhythmia, the swollen legs that I mentioned. So there are different levels to it. Sometimes they can have just the neuropathy symptoms that I was telling you about, the pain and tingling, and it doesn't directly affect their heart, but they still have that misfolding protein. And so, unfortunately, I wish I could say like everyone who has that gene is going to have symptoms, but I can't. And in some ways, that's a good thing because we don't want everyone to have neuropathy or heart failure. So it's different levels. But I think it's really important that we identify if you do have the V122 gene, because again, having an early diagnosis can control the symptoms and can control treatment for it too.
Why it's so important to talk with your doctor?
No, it's so important to talk to your doctor about these symptoms.
Yes, which brings us to our next question. What should someone discuss with their doctor if they have failure in some of the symptoms of ATTR-CM that were mentioned in today's presentation?
Okay, so that's a very loaded question. So I'm going to do my best to answer it again in different layers. It can be hard to know what to ask your doctor, especially when you learn about ATTR-CM, because I've given you a lot of information today. But here are a few tips getting started. Number one, always tell your doctor about any symptoms you're having, even if they're not related to the heart. ATTR-CM can cause a range of symptoms, again, including numbness or tingling in both hands or feet. I mean, in your hands or fingers, and that's known as carpal tunnel. It's in your wrist. You can have lower back pain that could potentially be a sign of ATTR-CM. You can have glaucoma, which is also a sign of ATTR-CM. This is why it's important, again, to tell your doctor about any symptom you're having. Tell your doctor if any of your family members had a heart condition. This is useful information for your doctor because hereditary ATTR-CM can be passed down through families as other cardiac conditions. I think it's important to tell your doctor if you've had any heart tests in the past. These may include an EKG, an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of your heart, lab tests. If you know these results, be sure to share them with your doctor. And lastly, it can be helpful to prepare a list of questions or concerns to your doctor. You can actually use the resource that we talked about on yourheartsmessage.com. You can create your discussion guide. I think sometimes, you go into your doctor's a visit and you're just like, oh, I forgot all the questions that I wanted to, or some of the symptoms. And I think that's why this is such a useful resource to help get that conversation started.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was a great answer to that question. And it looks like we have time for one more.
Okay.
It sounds like some doctors may not be able to put the symptoms together to come up with this diagnosis of hereditary ATTR-CM. Can you verify if that's true?
Oh, absolutely. I can verify that's true. I mean, Mr. Peters was an example of listing the list of doctors that he was seeing before they connected the dots to say that he had ATTR-CM. So some of the symptoms of ATTR-CM are similar to other health conditions, and this can make ATTR really difficult to diagnose. And so some doctors are not aware of ATTR-CM and how even though we say that it's rare, but how often it can occur in African American, Black, or Afro-Caribbean communities. And that's why it can be led to a missed or late diagnosis. ATTR-CM gets worse over time. So it's important, again, to find it early. And that's why I keep reiterating, like, please discuss your symptoms with your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Use these resources to create a script, you know, you can do it on your phone. You can write it down if you don't have a printer. Talk to your doctor if you have heart failure or any of these symptoms that may seem not related, but actually truly might be related.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for answering those questions.
So before I go, I think that it's important for us to talk about what I want you to take from this program. And here are a few important messages. One, ATTR-CM is a serious health condition that can lead to heart failure, but it's often overlooked in Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean communities. Second, anyone with heart failure and unexplained symptoms of ATTR-CM should consider talking to their doctor. Remember to tell your doctor how you feel about any symptoms you're having, regardless if they seem heart-related. If it is confirmed that you have ATTR-CM, you should talk to your doctor to understand what are the next steps that are right for you. I lastly want you to consider sharing this information you learned today with your friends and family.
Well, this has truly been a great presentation. We are so grateful for all the great information that Dr. Thomas has provided to us. And now we do have just a couple of more audience participation questions. The first one we want to know is, how did you learn about today's event? Check all that apply. Radio, the Pfizer website, social media, Facebook or Instagram, through your church or community organization, or by the newspaper. Scan the QR code, go to slido.com and enter the number, and let's see how you learned about it. Just a few more responses that will definitely help us to understand how to best get the information out going forward. Wonderful. Let's see what our results are. Look at that. Church, community, organization. All right. We see what the answer is and how important the church is. Let's go to our next question. All right, and now this is our final question for the audience. We would like to understand how useful this event has been. Please tell us, how likely would you be to recommend one of our events in the future? Your choices are not likely, likely, or very likely. A few of you have already responded. Keep them coming. Great. Can we get a few more responses in to help us to understand how to plan in the future? Thank you. We thank you all so much for your participation in these questions. And the answer is very likely. That is wonderful to hear. Well, as we come to a close of our presentation, remember to talk to your doctor. If you have heart failure and are experiencing any of the signs or symptoms of ATTR-CM, you can also visit voicesfortheheart.com for information that can help you more.
We'd like to say thank you to everyone that's taken part in today's presentation. Thank you to Voices for the Heart, because we can potentially save lives. Thank you so very much. And the way to make this presentation the best, go and tell someone what you've learned. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
And this now concludes our program. Goodbye, everybody.